Let's all scream. Let's all scream. Scream, scream, let's all scream.
Hello everyone and welcome to Let's All Scream. I'm Saleh Al Braik
I'm Shehlaa Ali.
And I'm Hassan Al Marashi.
and welcome to the last episode of the season. That's right, it is the season finale of Let's All Scream and I can't believe we've actually made it this far.
I know.
Yeah.
22 episodes.
Episodes.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
If you think about it, 22 episodes, what is that?
22 weeks. That's how many months?
My math
Here's
is
my math. It's,
not
it's
good.
about 5.5 months. Technically, by the way, for those of you that may not know, we actually went into recording the podcast before, not necessarily before the pandemic hit, but
Before we were
before we
quarantined.
were quarantined. So
Yeah.
as the
Yeah.
United Arab Emirates, so we didn't have any clue that this was going to happen. Otherwise, knowing that it was coming and knowing that we were about to get quarantined, we didn't even fathom the fact that we might get under lockdown and stuff like
Yeah.
that made it difficult
Yeah.
for recording. But we've been through one of the most challenging times of our generation, I feel,
Yeah.
and recorded it on the podcast.
I know.
So I think in the future we're going to be looking back at this as kind of like our digital diary.
Yeah. And, like, on the one hand, I feel like we started at the perfect time in the sense that, we were working from home for a long time. And so it allowed us the opportunity to sit down and record and plan our episodes.
Yeah.
Well, I say plan. There's not much planning that goes into these, really. But I mean, it also, on the flip side, we had so many other plans in the sense that we wanted to have guests on and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think we just kind of, all three of us decided it just wasn't the right time right
Yeah.
now. And so it's just been the three of us. But I've really enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah,
How have you
Yeah.
guys
credit
felt?
goes to Shehlaa, by the way, because I don't know if we've mentioned this, but Shehlaa was kind of the inspiration behind
Yeah, it
starting
was
this
her
podcast.
idea,
yeah.
We were just like, me and Hassan are, I don't even know what we were doing. We're just being ourselves.
We were literally sitting upstairs, I remember.
Yeah.
And I came outside. I put the baby to sleep.
Yeah.
And I remember I was just venting to you guys. And then I took a break. I went to the bedroom and I came back. And as I was walking and sitting back down, I was like, you know what, guys? We should just do a podcast and like vent on it and like talk on it.
Yeah, and I remember when we were coming up with the name as well, and we were, okay.
Do we say the story behind
we have
Let's
to
All
share the
Scream?
story because people are going to ask us, and people have asked me, why did you call it Let's All Scream? And when I try to explain it to them the intellectual way of
Right.
like, screaming means venting, nobody knows that there's actually a story behind it.
Yeah.
So let's just sum it up. Basically, so yes, this podcast is primarily called Let's All Scream because it's the three of us screaming, between quotation marks, about topics
Yeah, I was
that
going to
we're
say, I
pa-
don't think people can see you're doing air quotes.
Yeah.
screaming about topics that we care about or that we find important or interesting. But the Let's All Scream is also an inside joke. So a few months ago, Saleh was over and the baby was sleeping.
Yeah.
And we were, I can't remember what we were doing, but like we had ordered takeout.
Yeah.
And Saleh had like dropped something, and then Shehlaa had like
I remember
dropped
it
something.
like crinkled the bag.
yeah.
The bag, yeah.
the,
So it was
paper
just
bag.
a lot of noise.
And then we were like talking really loudly
Yeah.
or something, and Saleh started laughing. I was like, "Yeah, let's all scream, right? So the baby wakes up.
No,
Scream! Let's."
that's not actually. I remember you said that. Imagine the baby comes out and says, "Yeah, scream, scream."
And that's why if you guys, I mean, you obviously hear the intro music to the
Yeah.
episode in the beginning, and actually that's, if you listen to the very end of the tune, you will hear it's actually me
Scream.
saying,
Yeah.
scream, scream, let's all scream. And that's what Hassan was like imagining the baby was saying to us, like kind of scolding us. So it became an inside joke. So every time after that, whenever we would, like, obviously I come over practically every day, and so when the baby is asleep and any of us makes a small noise, we'd each use that
Use
Yeah,
it
as
and
a
say,
side
scream,
joke.
scream. Why don't you all
Yeah.
scream?
And then that suddenly became the name of the episode.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
feel like when we went into it, we didn't necessarily have a plan going forward. Like we knew the idea of what we wanted to do, but we didn't foresee, oh, we're gonna do this. We planned 22 episodes, and at this
Yeah.
Oh,
point,
yeah,
we'll have a
yeah.
season finale. So just so that you guys know, yes, this episode is the season finale, and then obviously we'll be taking a short break, and we'll hopefully come back
Soon.
with a season 2.
Yeah.
And we have a few ideas of the things that we want to do. No spoilers, but we do have a few ideas now that, like Hassan said, we had initially ideas of having guests over, but going forward for season 2, we have a few things that we wanted
our
to
sleeves,
do,
yeah.
and we're gonna try to pull those tricks out, and now that the world is opening up more. So inshallah, very excited for what is to come. But I thought, we have to kind of have this episode where we explain to you guys the inspiration behind it,
Yeah.
how we
Yeah,
came
and
up
how we
with the
came up,
name,
yeah.
and just overall what we feel about the
podcast.
the podcast itself.
Yeah, I think so. I really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed doing it. I didn't think I'd like it as much as I have.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned this in one of our earlier episodes. I really thought I was going to be super self-conscious and I'm going to hate hearing my voice, which is still uncomfortable. I think no one likes hearing the sound of their own voice, but I've gotten used to it, and it's just been so great. Honestly, the most rewarding thing has been seeing all the feedback
Yeah.
and having conversations with people online based on the topics that we discuss. And that was kind of the whole purpose that we wanted to start this.
Yeah.
For me, it actually has been. So first of all, definitely, it's boosted up. I feel like my self-esteem has
Yeah.
completely changed. For example, like I never. First of all, I used to have a lot of insecurities, and then once we started the podcast. I feel like I had so many people. You guys have seen, like they message me and be like,
They relate to what you say.
I
Really?
I
Yeah.
relate to. I feel like we can be best friends, or things like simple things like that. And I'm like, you know what? I don't
not
need
alone.
yeah, and I don't have to
Yeah.
be insecure about this or that, or
Yeah.
like, especially when I feel like sometimes I put myself out there and I tell a story or something, and I feel, oh, maybe I shouldn't put the whole story.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, no, it's actually, I feel like people can relate more to me
Yeah.
when I am honest.
Because the whole idea, I mean, when again, we're not three strangers. We do
Yeah.
come from different, I would say, walks of life or experiences, but we do obviously this is our normal life. Yani literally, the hours before we recorded this and the hours we're gonna be spending after we record
After,
this are together, and so we
Yeah.
do spend a lot of time. We do have a lot of discussions. We laugh, we cry, we do everything together. So we learn. That's the most important thing. We learn together. So coming into this, I think we all came in just with, I think, open hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Shehlaa was saying, being vulnerable is something that is a challenge sometimes, because you express your thoughts out into the world, which is
Yeah.
scary for some people.
Yeah.
But then when you get people giving you feedback and telling you, and I relate, or I feel like I'm not alone. The best thing I've heard was, I feel like I'm sitting with my
Yeah.
friends and sitting with
Yeah.
my three best friends. Those comments, even though they may not be in the thousands,
Right.
but that alone is something
It's
that gives so
still-
much
Yeah.
like satisfaction, because you just feel like you're not
And
alone.
even any criticism we've had has been so constructive and so polite and so nice
Yeah.
and really, really helpful. So
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
genuinely, I think, whether it's positive feedback or like criticism, it's been honestly all great to get.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the podcast community, I feel, is reflective of that. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
whenever you look at platforms, you have different types of criticism or
Yeah.
constructive criticism.
Right.
I think when it comes to podcasts, it's very much a community, because it's a handful. Not
Yeah.
really, but in the sense of the wider...
Compared to all the other
compared
platforms,
to like
yeah.
videos or photos, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to also add, though, my favorite part about all of this was, like you said, Saleh, we come together, we're sitting down laughing, and then whenever we feel like we are ready to record, we just we're like, okay, let's record.
Yeah.
Other times we would have felt like, oh, okay, you know what? Today I'm not, like, one of us was not feeling up to it, or one of us isn't ready to talk, or we want to have more of a private conversation, or just, sitting and you're like, let's say one day Saleh came in and was like, no, you know what? I just want to vent today.
Yeah.
So we would postpone it. And that's what I loved the most, is that I felt like it was just so organic, and it's just so nice to just, whenever we're ready, then we sit down and talk.
It's very therapeutic. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like it's also therapeutic in the sense that when you voice
get
things
your
out.
thoughts, yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
I was I was a guest on a like a fellow podcast channel. The episode hasn't come out yet, but I'll definitely let you guys know. And
Do you want to give them a shout out?
Yeah, so it's the Millennial Mirrors crew. So these guys interviewed me, and they're upcoming. They have a third season coming out, inshallah, at the end of this month, so at the end of August, hopefully, crossing fingers. And so the nice thing about being on that show is it made me realize how, I don't know if this is the right term, but introspective, how it basically having a podcast makes you look within.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it does really, things that we don't say, like, so for example, these topics that we talk about, we could discuss them on other days, but because we're kind of compressing them in an episode, we get our opinion. So there are some things I found out about Shehlaa, or even stories that I found out with Hassan that we never knew from each other.
Yeah, it forced us,
nice
I think, or not forced us, it encouraged us to have these discussions that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think it's been really nice, and it has really, I think at least, opened up our minds to different ways of thinking. Yeah. And I think it's like that has been really rewarding.
So to kick off the episode, since we are looking at our journey thus far, I wanted to start off with asking you guys, what have you learned, or what has this past year taught you? I know it's obviously going to be very narrowed into the whole pandemic, etc. But I just wanted to know, what do you guys take out from it? Although we're not in the green yet, and we're not out of it just yet, but I'm sure as hell we've all learned a few lessons or two.
Well, for me, I think the main one was, and I've spoken about this before on the podcast, is I started off with a lot of anxiety, especially starting off with the whole podcast. It was during like you said in the beginning, with when the pandemic was starting off.
Yeah. And as a new mom.
Yeah. So that really shocked me, and I went through a bit of I would say a roller coaster of a few anxiety attacks, not even attacks, but just definitely things that I've never experienced before.
And you were vocal about it during the first few episodes as well.
Yeah. So I think that having that really opened up my eyes to showing me that we really can't control what we go through or what happens. All we can control is our view and how we react to a certain situation.
Yeah.
And especially again, because of the whole pandemic, I feel like one thing that I learned also was the fact that sometimes it's not bad to ask for outside help, or even just to say, hey, I would like to talk, or, I would like to, I need some help, or you can voice
Confide in
exactly.
someone.
That's powerful, actually, realizing that, because some people are not easily associated with that, in the sense that it's so hard for them to ask for help. And I know you, so that we don't get sentimental on this podcast, but I know you, and I've seen how you've grown tremendously throughout the years that I've known you. And mashallah, the amount that you have grown as a mom is so inspiring.
Thank you.
Hatta from, I saw how much you struggled when it came through the pandemic. Like many people out there will relate, and you had a whole other factor to think about, which is, your child.
I think that's why,
that's why it heightened, I think.
Because I was already dealing with being a new mom.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, the whole pandemic.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like if I, let's say, subtract the new baby, I would have been okay. Or subtract the pandemic, I would have been okay. But then adding these two together, I feel like it really intensified. And I went through quite a few.
But look at you now, like صراحة, like knowing you, yes, okay, it might still, we might all still have our, the anxiety still might be there, but seeing how you've changed from that day one to now, is actually يعني, much better. And I think it's mainly because of the exact thing that you said, which is you grew to learn how to ask for help or seek for help.
That's the thing, is that I feel like it didn't, as much as like, okay, it helped me, it mainly gave me the tools to learn how to cope with these anxiety waves.
Yeah.
I don't want to say attacks, because there are different levels, and some people experience much more extreme, whereas for me, I mainly experience, start like start thinking, and like
spiraling.
Exactly. And you guys have seen how it impacts me in my day, and it would start with something small and then just quickly escalate. So that's why I don't like calling them attacks. But it taught me how to, or at least like I've learned the tools to use to calm myself down, to bring myself back, or at least ground myself. So that's really helped.
Nice. How about you, Hassan? What has the past year taught you?
I mean, there's been a lot, but the main thing is, I really thought this year was going to be completely different. There were so many things that I was worried about that because of the pandemic didn't end up happening.
Yeah.
Which in a way was a blessing in disguise. But yeah, it just taught me that, you really can't plan for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, of course, in the short term, but I think there's this phrase that I've heard. It says, "We plan and God laughs."
Yeah.
And so what that means is, God has his own plan for us, and we, as much as we can try and set things in order, at the end of the day, life is gonna take you on a journey that you're destined for.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you should just walk through life with no plans and just wing it. But at the same time, I think it's taught me to let go and not hold on to things that, or not be fearful of things that I can't control. Because it's most of the time, if I look back on my life and all the things that I was nervous about or anxious about or afraid of, I got through them, and it worked out like it either made me stronger or it ended up being a great experience, or I learned from it at the very least.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that this year has taught me on so many levels. And it's also made me a lot closer to people, and closer to people that matter to me, which has been a real blessing.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
No,
me and Shehlaa both reached for the mic first. We're like, oh, thanks.
No, obviously you guys are definitely included.
Yeah, whether you like it or not, we have to sit together once a week at least. It'd be really awkward if we weren't close and running a
you
podcast.
mean once a day at least.
How about you, Saleh?
I think it's funny how we all have different perspectives of what we've taken out from this year, and I think everyone can relate to what Shehlaa said and Hassan, what you said as well. Beyond what you guys had mentioned, I think this year taught me something that I have had trouble dealing with my entire life. Growing up, I and Hassan would know this. I'd have a different clique of friends every season. So I would always try my best. And what happened was, going back to that time in high school, I'd always be told by people as in, why are you friends with so-and-so? Because you don't fit that category. And then after a few months, I realized I was the odd one out, and I'd go with another group. And I was always the one who wasn't really... it's funny because now people think I'm this, very social person, but back in school, I wasn't really picked for any teams.
Yeah.
Even when we went on school trips, no one would want to share a room with me because they all had their buddy in a way.
Right.
And because I was always the odd one out, so I would always like to fit in groups. The main thing or the issue was, is that I realized I didn't want to be alone.
Right.
And I think I was afraid of being alone or afraid of my own company.
Right.
And so I would always try to latch onto anything.
Even if you necessarily didn't share the same interests.
Exactly. Like I would mold myself to fit that group because I was insecure or I didn't know. And then, some people would tell me, no, you don't need, my mom would like use a sentence and say, it's okay, you don't need best friends. I'm your best friend, you know? And I'm just like, no, mom.
That's
that's
sweet
not what-"
and
Yeah.
sad at the same time.
I was like, Mama, you listen to this, so you are my best friend. But I was at that time, I was like, no, I need my own friends. And so the story that I'm trying to say is, I kept on trying to mold myself to fit others, and I didn't know who I was. It's funny how during this year I found out who I was, and I love my own company.
That's so-
which is so.
That's such an accomplishment.
You
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, yani, I think it took.
That it takes a lot of people,
Yes.
or sorry, it takes a lot of
Lot of time.
time for some people to, and most people actually, to achieve that.
It's because we were stuck, right?
Yeah.
We were stuck indoors. We were on lockdown. Alhamdulillah, you guys know I was fortunate to not be completely alone.
Yeah.
But there were times where, technically for me, who was going out every single day, who was meeting people every single day, I was bouncing from like one place to another, whether it was a meeting or a coffee shop. I would compress my time, and I would always tweet or even put on Instagram and just say I wish there were more hours in the day,
Right.
just because I was chasing. Nowadays I find myself making time for me.
Yeah.
So even that day when I was over, I was telling Hassan, Shehlaa, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go home early because I just want to get I just want to make myself a good cup of coffee, and I just want to
Watch
chill.
something.
I just want to Netflix or read a book, and I actually just find myself in the house just enjoying my own company, which
Yeah.
I've never done before.
No, honestly, it's so valuable, and I think people don't realize that. But once you have that, I think then that's at least the first step in not relying on others for your own happiness.
Yeah, and I didn't notice it until now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like now, since we are
Coming
talking about
out of,
this,
yeah.
coming out of it, I realize now that I like it, and now I can finally. I just feel like I feel healthier, if that makes sense, in the
Right.
sense that it was always like I was chasing something to fill a void,
Yeah.
and now the void is filled, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
It's-
alhamdulillah.
As you were talking, you reminded me of so one of our friends, actually the beginning of quarantine and the beginning of the pandemic, she actually her phone broke, I think.
Okay.
And so she went on the first it was almost 2 or 3 weeks, no phone, nothing.
Yeah.
And even coming out of it, like later on, I would message her, I would call her, and I would be like, I would tell Hassan, she's not picking up the phone.
Yeah, we were getting worried.
Yeah, and then we have a group with like her husband, and then I remembered, hey, wait a minute, we made that group like a year ago or
Ages
two. Let me try to find it and message. So I did message, and then her husband was like, yeah, she's fine. It's just her phone broke. But coming out of it later on, I spoke to her, and I was like, how was it? Like that must have been like extreme to go from a normal life
Yeah.
to not having a phone and during the
Being in
pandemic.
quarantine.
Which has no distractions because
Exactly. But the thing is, she says that it was amazing. It
Yeah.
gave her time to spend time with her husband and her son.
Yeah.
And she said, I loved having
Yeah.
that quality time.
Yeah.
And that's something actually that I found was such a blessing. Is I was so worried that, I would miss out on a lot because I'd be at work in the office.
Mm-hmm.
But working from home has been so great because I've gotten to see my daughter grow up firsthand and be active and involved in her life for the first year of her life so far.
Yeah.
So it's been amazing, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
But since we were talking about the past and the things that we've been through in the past year, looking at the rest of your life, is there a memory that you guys would like to go back to, or whenever you think about, brings a smile to your face?
Looking at the past, there's a couple of moments. It's very hard to choose one, but there's always a memory that always picks up from my childhood that brings a smile to my face. And it was, I don't know, I think I might have mentioned this in a previous podcast, but so both of my grandmothers, the way that they used to put me to bed, whichever grandmother was at the house at the time. I didn't live with them in the same household, but they would come often because they didn't live that far by. And so they would come over, and the way that they would put us to bed is they dim all the lights. They would obviously keep a night light for me. And then they would recite verses from the Quran.
Okay.
And some of them were their favorite verses. And so what that has done for me moving forward without even knowing is I myself also end up reciting the same verses that they were reciting before bed.
Because it brings you like
Because
peace
it brings
and
me
calm.
peace
Yeah.
and calm when I go to bed. And it's something so powerful because it is the verses of the Quran which are already so powerful, but also it's, whatever whenever I do hear the verses moving forward in my life. So if it was they were recited at a gathering, or they were recited at
In a mosque
a
or something.
mosque or
It would
something,
immediately
it
bring you back.
immediately take me back and put such a smile on my
Yeah.
face. And I remember, and for those who are fortunate enough to grow up with grandmothers, it takes me back to such a peaceful and protective, because if you can imagine, I'm just a kid
Yeah.
in the embrace of a grandmother
Yeah.
reciting the Quran in a quiet room right before bed. I think at that point in time, while I was young, I felt invincible in the sense that I felt like the world
safe
safe
and-
and the world couldn't touch me. And it's funny, it could be a mechanism of why I want to go back there, because it
Right.
was that feeling. But anytime someone talks to me about the past or a memory that I choose to go to, it's definitely to one of those two grandma moments.
Can I ask how old you were?
It started off for as long as I can remember, so I can't remember how young it started, but hey, it went on till my teenage years, like at least until I was 15, if I would say, or 16, because my one of my grandmothers had passed when I had turned around 15, and then the second one had passed when I had turned 19. So it was around the teenage years where it stopped, but it started from as long as I can remember.
Wow, you slept with a nightlight until you were 15? That's kind of cringy.
I sleep with a nightlight until today, okay? I'm not ashamed to say that I'm
No,
a
I'm
fan
joking.
of the nightlight.
Hassan, you leave the bathroom light on.
There's a difference.
It's light.
How about you guys?
For me, honestly, our wedding day, because for a number of reasons, mainly, obviously, my mom, Allah yarhamha, was alive back then, but also all my family had flown in, for those that were abroad, and those that were here, obviously, all got together, and it was such a happy occasion. Like, people were genuinely happy and there to celebrate with us. We didn't have, by Arab standards, we didn't have a massive wedding. It was around 300 people, which I know, like, in most cultures, like, that's a huge amount. But by Arab standards, that's considered a small wedding. So it was really nice, and my friends were there, and it was like, I wish I could go back and enjoy it more and spend more time with people, because we kind of like ended the night pretty early.
Yeah, actually, looking at all the other weddings I've been to.
Yeah,
What
we
time
ended-
is early?
like by midnight.
Oh yeah, that is
Yeah.
early by Arab
Yeah.
standards.
Yeah. So
Oh, for those who don't know, you can say what time
well,
it starts.
Well, Arab weddings start in the evening usually.
yeah.
Yeah, like ours started at 8.
Yeah.
PM.
And then, 8 p.m. And then by 12, that's it.
Oh, that's actually
Yeah.
short, because usually not usually, but sometimes even the groom comes down. So the bride walks in first
Yeah.
usually, and then the groom walks in sometimes at midnight. That's how late they enter.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
usually the
Yeah.
bride can walk in by like 10 p.m.
Yeah.
if they're late.
Yeah.
And then the groom comes in at 11 or
I
even
was
No.
very well,
On
On
time.
time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a good bride.
And yeah, so that's a night that I would love to have enjoyed more.
Yeah.
It was still a great night, and I still remember it fondly. But yeah, I would have loved to savor that moment more and enjoy that night.
Well, how about you, Shehlaa?
Okay, so I'm gonna sound like a horrible wife, not to include my husband, but especially after he said his favorite night was the wedding. But no, looking back at my childhood, so there's one memory that every time I look back at this memory, or anytime anyone says the activity, so I'll explain. But anytime it comes up, I automatically like gets into this happy, wonderland, everything is great mindset, which is basically so the whole event was camping.
Okay.
Camping in Canada in the summer is a big thing.
Okay.
And so, especially with our family, we would go every year. there's one year we went camping for I think a week, and it was amazing. Like, I know, Saleh, you're just like, a week.
Honestly, that sounds like my worst nightmare.
We did camping here in the desert, but
It's
it
not the
was like a
same.
night.
It's not the same.
Okay.
Camping there, first of all, there are amenities for you. So like bathrooms, showers.
no.
They are outdoor. They're not 5-star, but
Yeah.
they are there.
Yeah.
Right.
But whenever I look back at it, so we went with my two uncles, as I've always said, the only family I had in Canada, and their families, and we went, and it was all children. We all took our bikes, and honestly, every summer that we went camping is memorable, but this one was especially memorable because it was very, very innocent. And when I say innocent, it was just,
Like pure joy, innocent
pure
fun.
joy, laughter. We had brought like a good amount of meat that we had put in the freezers
To barbecue.
and barbecue. And as we started barbecuing, I guess we didn't calculate how much we needed. And so I remember the ladies were like sitting there, like the moms were sitting there and making the kebabs, and then the men are just barbecuing it, and they're like, "We're not done yet. Are you serious? Come on, are you?" Like, we look back at the photos and we're like, we barbecued for hours, I feel.
And obviously you can't just leave it because the
That's
meat
the
will
thing,
spoil.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we were like, at least let's barbecue it and then we'll use it.
Yeah.
The next day we had eggs with
Side of kebab.
with the side of kebab. For lunch was kebab. Dinner was something with kebab.
Dessert was
It was just, several things happened on that trip that whenever I look back on it, it just brings a smile on my face.
Yeah.
I remember literally me and my cousins, especially I remember, if you guys remember the last episode, if you haven't heard it,
Yeah.
we were talking about siblings. And so my two cousins that were around my age, we would literally ride the bike and go back and forth. And, we'd go like biking, and then we'd come back, pass by the campsite, hey guys, and then continue on biking. And so, it's just, no one had phones, no one had like technology. It was just pure fun.
One thing that, speaking about, I don't know why, because you mentioned bikes, and it's all of a sudden it took to me, so I'll just put it in bonus memory.
Okay.
So whilst I was growing up, one of my aunts was living in Denmark, and I don't know if Shehlaa knows the story, or even Hassan knows the story, but
I think I've heard it.
Okay, so one of the stories that we did, so my aunt was in Denmark, and she was working there, and she had 4 daughters, and so one of them, and we were very close, still very close, and she basically came up with this idea. So we'd spend some summers to go visit, because my mom wanted to visit her sister. And so we'd spend our summers in Denmark for a couple of summers. And one day, and we would always get up to like these crazy things. So one day we were bored.
Okay.
So we were just like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to perform on the street and for money.
Oh yeah, I remember
Okay,
this story.
and so Shehlaa, did you hear the story before?
No, I thought it was a different story.
Oh, no, wait. Oh, that one is another one. So we were thinking like, okay, so we're going to perform in the street for money. Mind you, by the way, they live in a neighborhood. So when we say street, we literally mean a quiet road where no car, the only cars that come down are the neighbors. So we went there. And so at the time, Backstreet Boys was a thing. So what happened is we put a little jukebox, back then where you have tapes. That's how old this is. So we put the tape, played the song, and so me and her would choreograph a dance, and we would dance together in the street. And we had a little like empty can in the front where people would put money. Obviously, there's no people walking around at all. Like literally, there's no one. And so I told her, you know why? It's because no one saw anyone putting money in. So here you go, take some change and walk around as if you were someone that was entertained by my dancing. And so I was still dancing. I remember it was Get Down by Backstreet Boys. And then she would literally, by the way, just walk around in a circle, not even that far. Like it's so obvious that she's faking it. And then she would come and yell out. She spoke Danish as well, so she would yell out in Danish, "Wow, you're amazing, I'm going to give you money," and like throw the money in and then walk away and hide behind the bushes. And we would just wait for another person. Let's just say no one ever walked, and I think if anyone did walk, they would actually take the money out just so that I could stop. But yeah, that was one of the memories.
Actually, sorry, bonus to the bonus story that you just gave. again, it's related to camping. That's the thing. When I was telling you, every time I think about camping or one of the summers, there is a highlighted story that I can tell. Like one year we went during Canada Day, and so all the men, we went with like a huge group. I think like 10 families, and so of course the men decided that they're going to put on a show for us ladies. And so Hassan, you've already met my uncles, so you can just imagine him times like 5 other men that are also funny, and they love to make jokes and love laughter, and they would like bring one of the kids from the audience, and poor kid, they'd bully him into doing things. And so it was just just like a very funny, I think we have recordings, and literally you sit down, watch the recording, the entire time you're just spending it laughing. Whereas another year we actually got hit by a tornado.
What?
Yeah, it was like
While you were camping?
While we were camping. And so it was such bad rain that the swimming pool, there was all the things around the pool was inside the pool.
Wow, what campsite is this?
Yeah, I'm telling you, there's like this was one of the campsites that actually had a water park.
Okay.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it was linked together, and then we go back to our camp area, and some of the doors were left open of the cars.
Oh, wow.
All the clothes is wet, all the tents are wet, and so during the actual tornado, it was scary because there was only one shop, which was like the.
Like a supplies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was the only shop, and that was the only coverage we had. So everyone imagine that could get in was in there. It was very packed. And then of course during the tornado it was scary, but the aftermath and just trying to clean up that mess was just so funny that you're just like, we go in, I think one of our parents had the engine, the front of the car.
Yeah, the bonnet.
Yeah, that was open, so you can imagine rain getting in there, and it was mess on top of mess on top of mess.
I like how you said we laughed while
We did, because of how
Ridiculous
bad.
it was, yeah.
So that's the thing, is when looking back on these summers, those are my favorite, I think.
I mean, I'm still thinking about dessert kebabs, and I think I'm going to patent the idea, so no one steal the idea. Dessert kebabs coming to a store near you.
Can I just tell you? Ask what kind of sides do you plan on putting with the kebab?
No, then that's gonna happen. Then they're gonna
I can't
steal
spoil it. Yeah, you'll have to wait and see.
I don't think I'm gonna have dinner tonight, guys.
But while we're reminiscing about the past, I wanted to ask you guys, what is something that you've learned, like a big lesson that you've learned in your life, or what is a regret that you have that if you could go back you would change?
See, I don't really believe in regrets in the sense that, yes, I might regret something, but I feel like everything I've done has shaped me to be the person I am today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I were to go back and change it, I feel like I wouldn't be the same person I am.
Yeah.
One life lesson I've learned is to really, one life lesson I've really learned is to really surrender in the arms of God, as they say.
Yeah.
In the sense that really I've learned several times in my life where I didn't know what is good for me or what is the next step for me to take. I've noticed that if I do just surrender, and I would literally sit there and be like, you know what, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if this was supposed to happen, let it happen. If it doesn't, I understand it's not meant for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And almost every single time I've done that, it's come out for the better, whether I knew it at the time or not.
Or not. Yeah.
But looking back at it, it definitely was. And it shaped me to the person I am and where I am today.
Yeah. I agree with you in the sense that I don't feel like, they say live life without regret.
Yeah.
Definitely no. There are some, I think, decisions that I did whereby I feel like
you could have handled differently.
I could have handled differently, or would have, have led me on different paths. But then again, I can only, speak from as a person that I am today.
Yeah.
And I love the person I am today, because of the decisions that took me here.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, whether or not I regret the decisions, because I thought maybe it will take me on a different path, or it would have gotten me here sooner. Maybe that could have been something that I could have had some control over. But I don't think that. I actually think when you make mistakes, or when you end up getting, or when you fall down, or when you kind of hit rock bottom,
Yeah.
that's what shapes up a character.
Yeah.
Not necessarily just living in this la la land that you would always, be happy and, happy go lucky.
Right.
So again, I do feel like, yes, okay, I do regret a few decisions, but I can live with them, if that makes sense. Like, it's
Yeah.
not something that's I'm gonna lose sleep on.
Right.
Yeah.
When it comes to life lessons, I think that for the past 32 years, I realized that I learned to speak up more, in the sense of putting myself first. And I am an advocate for this, and I've been saying this for at least the past few recent years, whereby it's not selfish to put yourself first. It's
Right. Yeah.
selfless, in the sense that if you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of others?
Others, yeah.
And so I lost sight of that, obviously being the eldest son, my dad traveling, being the eldest male in the household at
Yeah.
certain times, always categorizing or putting myself in this box of being the responsible one. I assumed responsibility meant, or love meant, sacrifice.
Right.
And so I sacrificed myself for the benefit of others, until I realized that, what? Like how I want the best for others,
Yeah.
those who love me want the best for
Yeah.
me. And so if I just speak up about the things that I'm passionate about and stand strong for what I stand for, that will make those who love me even more, because they see me happy. And those, that maybe don't. And, they always say, if you stand for something, or if you're vocal about something, you might lose a few friends on the way,
Yeah.
or along the way. But that's just because those people perhaps weren't meant for you, or in the sense in that were not supposed to last a lifetime. It was just like a season or
Yeah.
a lesson, for example.
There is a quote, I think, that I think we've already said this on the podcast.
Yeah.
But there are friends for a season, or a reason, a season, and a
A
lifetime.
lifetime, yeah. And I'm
So-
glad to say that you both are a reason to me. Just saying.
Wow.
I thought you were gonna say lifetime, and
know.
I was ready to say,
You guys should have seen Shehlaa's expression. She was expecting, like when someone was about to win an award, like the Oscar, and she was expecting to get up,
Yay,
and then
no.
had like a, yeah. So no, but I strongly agree with that. So
Yeah.
that's, I think, what I take as a life lesson
As a
so
life
far.
lesson.
How about you, Hassan?
I mean, for me, so I've definitely have regrets. There's definitely moments in my life that I look back on and cringe, or like wish I hadn't made certain decisions, or had handled situations differently.
I know, because usually Hassan doesn't want to say this, but there were times in our, we've been friends ever since we were born, and there were times where we were not as close as we are today, and so
I was like, where is he going with this?
I
and
knew
so
where he
I
was
forgive
going.
you for not being as close to me. I understand you were probably
But
going
I'm
through
pretty sure
things.
you weren't as close to him. Also, it's a two-way street.
Yes. Continue, Hassan.
I was like, where is he going with this? But yeah, but like you said, and this is either me being a genius with an original quote, or I've heard this somewhere and now I'm stealing it. But a life with no regrets is not a life well lived.
Yeah.
So I really think those experiences that I probably regret have shaped me to who I am, like you guys said. And I think it's more than that, it's enabled me to learn from my mistakes so that I can be a better father to my daughter. And that's something I always kept in the back of my mind was, when I was dwelling on something, I would think, one day this is something I can teach my daughter about, or my child about.
Yeah.
And as far as the lesson goes,
By the way, sorry, I cut you off. I did Google it, and it is a quote. Hassan, you didn't make that question.
You can't get copyright anymore. Please don't sue
who is
him.
it by? Just out of curiosity.
It says the Goodman
Good
the
men.
Goodman Project.
Oh, okay. I thought it was going to be like, you know how
yeah.
there are some quotes by Anonymous? I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm
Yeah.
Anonymous.
Or
it
like
was me.
Mark Twain.
No, the moment I wrote it, it came up the Goodman Project. So
Anyways, as I was saying, no, but a lesson that I've learned is to be patient and to always understand that, number one, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Whatever you're going through, it will. That's something my mom used to always quote to me.
Yeah.
And she used to always say, you know, this will pass, this will pass. Like, and that's something that has really helped with me dealing with my anxiety, is thinking of the future, thinking that, you know, there's going to be a moment where I'm going to look back at this and it's just going to be a memory.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get past it.
Yeah.
And then another thing is that, like you said, Shehlaa, to trust in God, because God has never let me down. If I
Yeah.
really think about it, no matter how dire my situation was, I've come out the other end. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here speaking to you guys.
Yeah.
So that's something that has been such a valuable lesson, and probably I overuse that lesson, Saleh, whenever you and I have our venting sessions, or even with you, Shehlaa.
yeah,
I'll always say, think of a time that you suffered in your life,
Sah.
and now you've gotten through it. So God has your back.
Yeah.
So that's a major lesson that I think I will always take forward with me.
another lesson I forgot to say in the beginning was something that I keep telling myself, or looking back, I wish I kept telling myself, or someone, actually a lot of people told me, but I never listened, is never to rush life.
Yeah.
Hassan knows this about me. I kept, like, throughout my entire life, I would always rush to the next stage in life, or the
Yeah.
next step, or the next, try to open the door even before it opens, as they say.
Yeah.
And I wish I just took a step to appreciate and to just
Enjoy
live
the moment.
Yeah, live in that moment rather than think, okay, but what's my next step? The next
Yeah.
step after this, like always. Like I remember going into high school. Okay, after high school is going to be university, yay!
Yeah.
And I would think about university while I was still in high school, and then in university, I'm like, okay, I want to think about marriage, or like as I was looking at universities and looking into my university plan, I would think, oh, but then how is this going to work with if I want to get married?
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't, I wish I hadn't based on it, because I don't know if we said this, but I went into university after I got married. But so of course I can't really base my university on just Hassan, because at the time I didn't know that Hassan is gonna be my husband.
You didn't know
we hadn't
Hassan.
met him yet. So that's the thing, is I always rush to the next step. Looking back, and to anyone listening who's still young, I don't know if we have any young listeners, but if we do have any young listeners,
Younger listeners.
Yes.
I'm still in the prime of our youth.
what are you talking about? You guys are still in your 20s.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
I love the pause. But yeah, so just enjoy life and don't rush to the next destination, and
Yeah.
just enjoy the journey, as they say.
Well, I think that's a great place to stop and to wrap up our final episode of our first season. Honestly, I want to say it's been a wild ride, but it's actually been so enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna miss recording.
Yeah, we promised not to take too long, but we just wanted to say thank you guys so much for supporting us, for the kind words, for the messages that you send, for sharing our story with others, and just honestly, just for being there, because as much as sometimes some of you say that we're there for you, you guys are also there for us, and so we're so happy, and I want to just say I'm proud of ourselves for committing to something. 22 episodes
I
is
can't
not
believe.
easy.
Yeah.
For first timers who have never launched a podcast,
Yeah.
but are fans of several ones. I just wanted to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart, because it really truly meant a lot to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
And please know that we're not going to disappear. So we're still around on our Instagram and our Facebook and on our email. So you can reach us there. Our Instagram and Facebook is at Let's All Scream, and our Gmail is letsallscream.podcast@gmail.com. So please reach out to us, give us episode ideas for the next season, and let us know if there's any people that you want us to talk about and bring on as guests in the future. We'd really love to hear from you. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Stay safe.